Way past the middle of my life, I found myself in Brunswick, Maine, searching for a dead aunt. My great-great-great-aunt Rachel Owen, who was born in Brunswick in 1781, 50 years after it was swiped from the Abenaki people by a guy named Thomas Purchas, and settled by immigrants from the British Isles who built churches and mills along the Androscoggin River and founded Bowdoin College in 1794. I know about Rachel because after my parents died, my brother and I found in the family stash this ledger that Rachel kept for a year of her life, 1829, the year she turned 48. No one had ever mentioned a Rachel Owen to us before. Indeed, no one had mentioned any Owens other than, of course, our mother, Barbara Lee Owen Weir, and her father, my Denver grandfather, Bob Owen. I knew nothing about any other Owens, and yet here was Rachel in this ledger of visiting and sewing. She makes socks, cloaks, frocks, gloves, and hats for practically everyone in town and visits all her best girlfriends and sisters-in-law. Sister Woodside, Sister Moody, Mrs. Dunning, Mrs. Captain Dunlap, Miss Giddings, Miss Bass. When she's not sewing or mending or knitting or making rugs or walking about, she's attending female meetings, her words, and spending a lot of time with someone named Narcissa. Went to Narcissa. Visited with Narcissa, spent the week with Narcissa. Narcissa is neither a miss nor a Mrs., nor a sister nor a brother. She's just Narcissa. I'm making up all kinds of stories about Rachel and Narcissa. What are their female meetings? Secret rendezvous on the banks of the Androscoggin River? When she says, "trimmed my bonnet," is that a metaphor? I found Rachel buried in a plot with her older brother John and his wife and daughter, Rachel's niece, also Rachel, Big Rachel and Little Rachel. I found out that Rachel had been Big Rachel, the school teacher. She made students count the stresses in every line of Paradise Lost, and when they missed a Pyrrhic foot, glared at them with piercing black eyes and said, "Very well, miss." Her ledger, which is mostly a matter-of-fact accounting of her doings on any given day over that year, nonetheless introduces two mysteries, one of which is, who is this Narcissa whose name keeps coming up? And the other is a love letter, which is separate, scrawled as if in rough draft on a piece of paper, folded and tucked into the back of the ledger. Mingling sensations of pleasure and pain impel me to ask of my friend, shall friendship so soothing be severed again? Shall no fond remembrance remain? Is the friend Narcissa? Are they breaking up? Can you think on your friend when I'm distant afar? Is Rachel leaving town? Can you wash from your bosom the affectionate prayer? 1829 was a tricky year for Rachel. It started with knitting and ended with packing. In November and December, she seems to be closing up her house and moving away somewhere. It's not clear. In early September, she says she spent a lonely, solitary night sitting up in the chamber where my mother died. In the middle of November, she says, she has the most solitary day I ever knew. And then she starts packing. However far she may have moved from Narcissa in life, she wasn't far from her in death. Narcissa Stone, she has a last name, is buried a couple hundred yards from Rachel. Is she Rachel's Narcissa? She was famous in town. She owned a lot of houses, including an inn. In lists of town councils and neighborhood watches, she's the only woman named. There's a rock in the river called the Narcissa Stone, which disappears when the water's high and lets the town know they're in danger of flooding. I don't know if Rachel and Narcissa were lovers or friends or co-workers or business partners. I have some facts, but the rest is imagination. But Rachel's ledger contains another story of a woman lost. At the end of her ledger, after her accounting of daily activities and before the poem, Rachel writes a story about her first experience of death, which is the death of her oldest sibling, her sister Mary, whom she calls Polly, who's buried here on the other side of town from Rachel, beside her brother, her father, and her mother. When about 8 years of age, I lost a sister, which were the first serious impressions I have any recollection of. It's her first memory. The death of Mary, who died unmarried at the age of 25. Rachel writes, "She often talked to me and the other children, warning us to beware of sin. Then she called me to her room one day and said, 'God will soon take me away, and this body will soon be food for worms. You will soon see me laid in the pit hole.' I cried myself sick," Rachel says, "with the thought that I should see her no more. My parents said she would never return to us, but we must go to her. But their efforts had no comfort. I was afraid to die, and with death ever in view, life could not be enjoyed." Mary was the first of the family to be buried in the ground. Her brother Samuel soon followed, then her father, and then in 1818 her mother. "Beware of sin," Mary told her brothers and sisters. Is that what Rachel and Narcissa discussed at their female meetings? Or maybe they rejected the notion of sin, and, wrapped in their cloaks and bonnets and mittens that Rachel had sewn, they walked down the Green Mall together in the middle of town, quoting Milton from memory, and out to the Narcissa Stone to see if the water had risen, and if they had need to worry about famine or flood or living or lying afar from each other.